Which prop should you get? Today, I want to talk about some information that recently came out by a good buddy of mine and show you the thrust numbers on all of today's modern propellers.
I'm just happy to be alive today.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Trevor Steele. We've got Chris here, who is a recent student in one of our adventure training classes. And over the last 13 years, I've trained 621 students at our beginner training program, Backcountry PPG. Today, I want to show some fascinating information that I found recently by a good buddy of mine named Neil. Now, Neil recently started a company called we'll put the information up right here. And he did a prop shootout with a whole bunch of different propellers, testing the thrust numbers of those props.
So the way we're going to do this test is every 15 seconds, we're going to record the RPM and thrust numbers. So it's going to be 1 minute max full throttle run. And we're going to see that the prop is able to maintain that RPM and that thrust throughout the entire 1 minute run up.
I found the information fascinating and I don't think it got enough of a reach. I also wanted an excuse to shout out my buddy's new business, as he makes a whole bunch of cool contraptions and products and has a great service. If you're interested in any of these things, visit his website for more information on that. Now, I want to get into the information about these propellers. In today's day and age, there's a handful of main prop brands, and I want to give you a little bit of information to help you make a decision on which prop you should get. You're spinning an E-prop and a 3-blade and a 130. So when it comes to props, there's a handful of different things to take into consideration. Firstly is size. You've got things from as small as 120 to 125, 130, 135, 140. Generally speaking, as you get a larger propeller, you get what?
More thrust.
More thrust. It also typically is more efficient, which means you burn less fuel.
Yes, sir.
The next thing you've got is 2-blade, 3-blade, 4-blade, and 6-blade. We're just gonna weigh 6-blade out. It's really unrealistic. We're also gonna pretty much weigh 4-blades out. They're super expensive. They do make more thrust, but because you have more weight, guess what you got?
Less efficiency.
No, a slower spin-up speed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So as you increase in weight, you slow down your spin-up speed. Yeah. So we're gonna weigh the 4-blades out, even though I've actually spent a lot of time flying 4-blades. We're gonna talk about 3-blades and 2-blades. Now, let's start with the different brands. We've got E-prop, which is the big brand, you could say, the most well-known. Helix, which is probably the second most well-known. Then you've got Fly the Best, FTB props. You've got Vortex Aero. You've got Vitarazi, fast accelerating props. Okay, so those are like the main props that you see out there. Now, I recently have started to fly primarily Helix propellers. And in the past, I've primarily flown E-props. Let's take a look at some of this information in regards to the thrust numbers for 130 centimeter props spinning for 30 seconds and the thrust numbers we get. For the E-prop, it got 156 pounds of torque. Is it pounds?
Pound-feet.
Pound-feet?
Mm-hmm.
Foot-pound of torque?
Pounds.
Foot-pounds. Foot-pound-feet of torque.
Foot-pounds of torque.
We got 156. That's the number. We got 156 foot-pounds feet of torque.
Foot-pounds. Foot-pounds of torque.
156 foot-pound of... Words are hard. This has been a struggle for me, guys. Starting with the E-prop, it is 156 foot-pounds of torque. There's our baseline, okay? We're gonna build off of that. The E-prop is probably the most well-known, most commonly flown. The biggest advantage of the E-prop is how light it is, which increases its spin-up speed. So basically, when you go to hit full throttle, how long does it take before it's slapping you with all that juicy thrust? The E-prop, given it's very light, gives you that speed super fast. So now let's roll into the Helix propeller, which is probably the second most commonly flown prop. And that is 158, which means, technically speaking, gives a little bit more thrust. Now we're talking like very small percentages here, but technically speaking, the Helix gives you a little bit more thrust. Now here's the changes, the differences between the E-prop and the Helix from what I've seen. Firstly, you've got a slower spin-up speed with the Helix. More weight, bigger propeller, takes longer to spin that up to full. When you give it all of the beans before the beans hit you, it takes just a little bit longer. The other thing I've seen with the Helix is that it tends to be a better propeller for the cruising cross-country guy. I just see the efficiency be a little bit better. Maybe because it makes just a little bit more thrust. Generally speaking, you get a little more efficiency if you have more thrust. I find it to be the better prop for the cruising around going to explore propeller. The E-prop I tend to see as the better propeller for the guy that's just ripping it up. You're diving around, you're cranking and banking, you can grab that throttle and spins up super, super fast. Now, the other thing with the Helix and the E-prop is the Helix is like a little bit beefier. So if you're foot dragging or taking impacts with little rocks or whatever, you can repair a Helix more easily and it can continue to live on for longer. So now let's roll into the fast acceleration prop, which is Viterazzi's approved propeller. It is very similar to a Helix. The fast acceleration prop got 149. Okay. That is a lot less. 158, the Helix is at the top. E-prop is right below at 156. The fast acceleration prop at 149. Interesting. Okay, and now let's talk about the Fly the Best, the FTB propeller. This has come onto the market strong in recent days with lots of claims saying that it's the latest and greatest. And technically speaking, it got 154.
So it's right up there with them?
It's right up there with them, but it is still technically below the E-prop and below the Helix. Now, if the rule of thumb of more thrust gives more efficiency, it technically would mean that it is less efficient. Now, that isn't 100% the case because pitch and other things come into factor when you're talking about efficiency. So I can't speak too much on efficiency for all of these propellers, excluding E-prop and Helix, which I have a lot of time on. But technically speaking, it is not making more thrust. Now, the other one that we will mention is the Vortex Aero, which got 163.
Wow.
That is actually quite impressive.
Yes.
That number made me interested in giving it a try because it might be more efficient.
Right.
It might just have more thrust and it might be less efficient. So don't take the more efficient rule of thumb as an absolute because it's definitely not. I found that information quite interesting and we will rank them from top to bottom right here. Now, he did a couple tests with 3 blades. Would you like to know what the 3-blade E-prop fast acceleration prop got?
Yes, I would. That's what I fly, so.
The 3-blade E-prop got 156, which is technically 0.3 less than the 2-blade. The 2-blade E-prop got 156.3 to be exact. Now the 3-blade fast acceleration prop got 154, which is more than the 2-blade fast acceleration prop. Now here's the thing with thrust numbers. The hard part is the pressure of the day, the temperature of the day, the heat of the engine. All of those things change how this information is. So what we're really looking at and what is important is the differences between the two. Because the 150 pound-feet of torque, well, it could be 130 tomorrow, 170 the day after. And it could be totally different from one engine to another. But what's good information is the difference between them because it was the same engine on the same day, you know, using the same thrust tester, so it's just as efficient or less efficient as all the other ones because the thrust tester and the engine and the frame and all of that also makes a difference.
So at least we were able to eliminate those variables from the test.
Exactly. We were able to see what the differences are from one to another. And the thing is this is unbiased information, which I like.
I like that kind of information.
I like that because whoever is selling one thing or another tends to have a bias, including myself. I as much as I don't want to admit it, there's always a little bias in there. And I like to see that information from top to bottom.
Yes.
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found some of this information useful and it will help guide you in your next prop choice. I'm totally gonna throw my bias in here, but I do sell propellers on my website, backcountryppg.com. I've got nearly 50 props in stock. I'd be happy to send you one today. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.